It's that time again. You know what time it is. Transfer time. I'm Trev Downey. That's Dave Davis. And we're going to talk you through the latest. And there is some latest. You may not like it. You may love it. You may hate it. But it is what we've been hearing via the various sources that Dave has been accruing over his time doing this show. And we're anxious to bring it to you. So let's get straight into it, my friend. Where do you want to start? What do you think's our jumping off point here?
This is one where, we said before we went live, this window is now, we're going yellow tie time, aren't we? We can't get away from that. These are going to go right to the deadline. And in the crudest terms, it feels like a bit with the window ending, it'll be death or glory. It just feels that way, doesn't it? It never is, but it just feels like there's no in between. So do you know what? We'll just start from the top when we're Liverpool-wise and let's unravel them one by one.
Let's do it because everyone is waiting anyway. And by the way, for those of you in the chat who come in about 5 minutes and go, what's the story with Isak? We're doing it now. So I can't help you. So let's have a look at the latest with the Isak situation, Dave. And there are some developments. Even as we speak, we'll hold our hands up and admit that we're that much slaves to this transfer crack that we've gotten ourselves into, that we were waiting for a little bit of a teaser there at 6:30 to see if it was going to make any big difference. It didn't. But the developments around Isak have been mostly positive in terms of Liverpool's hopes, because it looks as if, doesn't it, there was a big effort to sway him one last time to stay. Apparently a contract dangled in front of the lad. Apparently the big boys were in town to talk to him face to face. And apparently Isak's heels are firmly stuck in the ground.
Yeah, I kind of like this development update, whatever you want to call it. That there was a big drama yesterday, wasn't there? Because, Newcastle fans were wound up to hell as the game was showing last night. But they were excited from transfer-wise as the Sheikh was flying in, wasn't he? And he was going to get stuff sorted. And then there's the reports before the game that Jamie Reuben, one of the owners of the Reuben family, and the PIF delegation, they'd gone to meet Alexander Isak at his home, which was interesting because he gave up that rental one, as we know, didn't he? So I'd be intrigued where that house is. Well, that's a different discussion for another day, of course, in that regard. So the big thing that came out and this is important to say, Newcastle journalists are reporting that Isak has remained unaffected by that, not interested at all. Dug his heels in, as you said. As Fabrizio Romano and others have tweeted, absolutely no interest in going back and doing a bit of digging. As I've been sending you screenshots and we've been WhatsApping and chasing things down all day. That Newcastle put another contract offer in front of him with even an option of a release clause for next season, lower than the amount we're talking about for his sale. And it was still no, I want to go. So the positive development for me is he's looked in the whites of the eyes of the owners, isn't he, and made it clear. This felt like a final roll of the dice a little bit. And we'll have to see what develops. But at the same time, this kicked off again, didn't it? Newcastle making this move for Strand Larsen. Talks that, and this was an interesting tweet that Jan Arge Fjortoft put out this morning saying, 50 million bid rejected, but I still expect this deal to go through. And it's important to say, quite a few journalists, even ones from, Wolves and Newcastle end, are still saying that at the same time. There is a belief this will go through. It's just, small amounts, or 5 million, which isn't small in the real world, but obviously in transfer terms isn't that big a deal to get sorted. There's another bid expected. Now, there's the obvious line that people are doing them saying, oh, well, he'll be the Callum Wilson replacement. But considering Callum Wilson played about 300 minutes last season, are Newcastle really going to pay about 60 million quid for a backup? I think we've all got thoughts on that, haven't we, realistically? So he's in the mix. This is still in the mix, although it seems to be one that's not quite getting the traction that we want. Suppose with this, Trev, the end game has got to come eventually because look where we are in the day. It's Tuesday evening and it shuts on Monday evening, doesn't it? It's 6 days' time. But there's nothing guaranteed with this. But the meeting, the way it's working, I would say this has got a real positive feel to it. There's nothing guaranteed, but the way Newcastle are making these moves, I wouldn't be surprised if Strand Larsen's next bid gets made maybe tomorrow or the day after that gets wrapped up. I've just got a good feeling about this one now.
It's funny, isn't it, the way it can oscillate so wildly over the course of a day or 24 hours. And like I said, we were sort of hanging on for one of our mutually favourite Twitter accounts to give us a little bit of an extra bit of info there, which turned out to be not so much info as padding on the previous story and all about green lights and money and all the rest of it. And that all just feels like, a certain degree of fluff. And I understand people need to keep this story going, but there's nothing real apart from what you've just told us there. And that is very real. That's actual progress in that we've got a lad who's taken a real clear stand about wanting to come to Liverpool. That's great for us. We've got the message being received loud and clear by his club, his current employers. That's great. We all have listened ad nauseum to the contract chat. There was a very interesting conversation you were probably privy to in the AI WhatsApp, where we got some deeper insight into what that might mean. But there are all sorts of ways out of this for Newcastle where they end up doing really well for themselves with a big ball of money, and we get the player we want, and they get to fatten the coffers a little bit. And if this Strand Larsen thing is the one that finally gets over the line for them, I can see how you're spinning this to positivity. Can you just, for the sake of those who maybe haven't followed it as closely today, why is this one a little bit different to all of the other striker failed moves that they've made? Why do you feel that this one might be positive? I know you've kind of said it, but just reiterate for folks why you think this one might get done. Do you think it's on the back of Isak finally saying, no, lads, and them going, right, we got to get something done here, and it might be just a matter of increasing the finances, which God knows they can afford? Or is there some extra little wrinkle in it that makes you think it's more likely?
No, it is a fair question, and someone will always retort, and this is fair. Well, Newcastle failed about 26 forwards this season, this summer, haven't they, trying to bid it? So there's that in the mix. Absolutely fair. You couldn't debate that at all. I think the thing is, as you said, it's the combination of circumstances now. Isak has had that meeting with the senior brass at Newcastle and made it clear he's not backing down. Also with this one, it's the noises from both ends, the Newcastle end and the Wolves end. It's important to say that people are going to jump on that, they said he's not for sale. Yeah, do you remember how we said Luis Diaz wasn't for sale all summer? As in, no one's hit the magic number we want. And I get it. People will also say, well, hold on. If Wolves sell this boy, that's, double figures for goals. It could be the difference between them staying up. I'm not disagreeing or arguing with that at all. However, Wolves are making moves. A different type of attacker, but Uche's coming in. And there's a few others there looking at in the market. But the big thing for me, as I said, it's the noises from the Newcastle end, like here, and the Wolves end, both saying they really expect, there's only a small difference that this will happen. The player wants it. And this is no disrespect to Wolves at all, but it's a great move for Strand Larsen, isn't it? To be fighting relegation, to then be playing Champions League and, potentially being the number 9 for Newcastle as well. Newcastle's acceptance, like you said, that Isak wants out. And what's probably best if you're a Newcastle fan is saying, let's get the best possible deal. So when you stack all those facts up, Trev, Newcastle could still screw the whole lot. We know that. They could still screw the bogey completely. But there is a hope with all those facts.
Yeah, the ongoing Callum Wilson replacement line is a source of incredible mirth to me. And I see some people have picked up on it in the chat panel there as well, because just have a look at his record for Newcastle. Like, what exactly are they replacing? It's a daft thing. And the kid who scored against us last night, Sula, is nominally his replacement anyway. And they've got that up-and-comer in him. So they just need to get their comparative marquee signing over the line. And hopefully that will happen. Look, it's going to keep developing, and the chances are, Dave, like you have already hinted at on a couple of your shows, there's a fair old likelihood that you and I will be wearing matching yellow outfits on deadline day, and there may even be hope of a deal getting done at the very last minute, because there are things lining up like that. And realistically speaking, if we're being honest, our next story, Mark Guehi, could be one of those ones that gets done at the very death, because there is a wrinkle. We heard about the City link, and then we've heard counter stories to that saying, no, he still prefers the Reds. But now Glasner has a particular desire to play him on Thursday's key game. And that's pushing it for Liverpool. Liverpool might even consider that to be a little bit cheeky, and you can understand why. You can also understand why Crystal Palace might want to keep him for that particular game, given the significance of it. But if it does go past Thursday, there's every danger you and I are going to have matchy outfits, pal.
Yeah, it generally doesn't feel any other way the way this is headed. So, I mean, I mentioned it on the Daily Red on Sunday about, the USG. His agents have been approached by City to see what was the possibility. But as, various reporting, and Romano's got it on the screen there, good. I mean, I like hearing that Liverpool is his favourite destination. The big thing does seem to be, though, like you mentioned, Palace are determined to have him for this second leg, aren't they? To, get into the Conference League full, win this qualifier. So there's that. I think and a few people have mentioned this. Lewis Steele had it a bit earlier as well. There is the expectation that once this is done on Thursday, Liverpool will come back and, where all parties are willing, if we can find this compromise, which is still the key question, isn't it? Because time is ticking. Hopefully it works in our favour. But the one, like you said, wrinkle in this, which is important to mention, yes, Guehi wants Liverpool, but as the reports are there, they're not adverse to seeing the season out at Palace, aren't they, and going on a free. That's not seen as a disastrous situation for Guehi's camp at all. But all the hope is that this will get completed. And to be honest, you'll have seen all the reaction after last night's game and Mr. Canate's performance. People are wanting Mark Guehi through the door as fast as they can possibly get him. I'm not sure he solves everything, but he would help us a lot, wouldn't he, in that regard? But if the deal is going to be done for Guehi, I mean, after Thursday evening, so you're into Friday, Christ, Trev, you've got 4 days left to get it all sorted, haven't you? And it's also important to mention, Palace have got to get someone in, haven't they? I mean, Akanji's been linked and others will be mentioned, but they will have to get a replacement. This one has got yellow ties, outside AXA, get it all ready.
Yeah, because as you always say, we love a Friday. Our two boys love a Friday. But like the idea of us throwing a bag over Guehi's head on Thursday evening after the game and just dragging him off to Anfield because we know he wants to come and the clubs can sort out the business, that's fanciful because, like you say, they will want to have their replacement lined up, and we know they were linked with that Diamande kid. That seems to have gone quiet. But now there are the ones you've mentioned, and hopefully they'll get one of those done. This thing of having to be dependent on other clubs doing business is a terrible, terrible set of lads when it comes to our well-being. There is another wrinkle, though, as to why we may be pushing it to the last day and the last hours of this window. Because, Dave, we have gone from some people, I think when it went 2-2 last night, I've got some of the most gloriously morbid bastards on my timeline. It is just a treat if you're in the mood for it. But in the middle of a game where it's going poorly, I genuinely can't even look at my timeline most of the time. The darkness was oozing forth from these people. And not only were we going to absolutely make a balls of the entire season, we were going to make a balls of this transfer window. It was going to be absolutely worthless. We're a joke club, etc. This is how extreme it was. And now, today, Isak looks more likely. Guehi looks more likely. And give the people a treat because you have got this stood up. We're interested in another body as well.
I mean, I don't know whether I was excited or it gave me a headache between all the screenshots that you've seen the different bits and chasing things today. But yeah, is the short answer. And follow along with me here, people. There is genuinely a chance of a third. Liverpool are looking at options at the moment. The big thing to call out, and I think when people look at a transfer fee, and just this is just an illustration, this is not exact, but people will look at, say, 100, let's just call it 100 million for Isak, and say over 5, we'll chop it up, it's 20 million a season. It never works that way, does it, Trev? It's all about how much Newcastle are going to ask for the down payment, second payment, all those types of things. And the later you go in the window, the more clubs can just move it at the last minute, can't they? Just go, oh, sorry, did we say 50 million up front? Sorry, it's 70 million up front. And obviously, Liverpool need to get that deal done. So that comes into the mix. And you think, why am I talking about this? Because it sounds like Wish.com, Carol Vorderman type of thing. The reason I'm talking about this is Liverpool's third move will depend on almost what's left in the pot, how the finances work. That if they have to commit a certain amount to Alexander Isak this summer, it genuinely means there might not be that much, in the pot left to go for another. However, if you can get decent terms, again, you've seen the screenshot, it's been digging all day. Liverpool are genuinely looking for another attacker. Now, people are going to say, like, oh, is it Morgan Rogers? Is it Fofana? And all this. And again, it's not, I sound like a politician, I get, but it's not a yes or a no. Liverpool don't know what's left in the pot yet, don't they? They don't know fully what they're committing themselves to. And they won't commit to another until they know Isak's locked in or it's not, and we move on type of thing. But the key thing, and as you said, having it stood up, is Liverpool are looking at a third option. And interestingly, the other bit we got with when they did the deal for Tyler Morton, do you remember from Lyon? They have got a lock-in with, I don't know even what you call it with Lyon, and almost like an agreement around Malik Fofana, in the next few windows, as in what we can bid for him, the ability to match it, as you'd say, in that type of regard. That's why Malik Fofana's name keeps coming up time and time again. Am I saying it will be Malik Fofana? No. Am I saying Liverpool will definitely get a third? Absolutely not. What I am saying is Liverpool are trying to obviously lock in Isak, know what they're doing, and time is ticking fast, innit?
Now, the first question I asked you on the back of this revelation was, but is it another one that we're looking for at rather in case Isak breaks down, or the number that they want up front is too big, or whatever happens to be? Is it in other words a sort of a pivot, or is it all three if we can swing it? And you seem to have had the feedback that if we could do all three, we would do all three.
Yeah. And there's that famous phrase, as it will come back, as you know, that get chasing people and getting answers. Creative accounting is always a great thing, as they say, but it will just all really come down to how much, if we get Isak, are we locking in? Now, it's great that Liverpool, and I keep seeing this figure, which, again, 130, 135 million, everyone's banding about. And yeah, I've heard that. We've had suggestions. But the big thing getting today was there's no guarantee yet how much Newcastle, if we do the deal, touch wood, are going to ask up front. What are the payment terms for this deal? And that is going to be the knock-on effect for, can you do the third, yes or no?
Now, you mentioned on your show earlier on, it's not here on our agenda, but people will be pissed off if we don't mention it. So I'm just going to bring it up to annoy you. Before we get to some of the outgoings, there was a story going around of, I don't know what origin, that we were looking perhaps, if the exact thing was hitting a wall, to pivot quite strongly to one of the people we were very excited about back at the start, which is our pal over in Spain at Atletico. Now, I don't know how real that story is. It seemed to be getting repeated by people who had a little bit of common sense. Whether they were also just in hopeful land, I don't know. Is there anything to that? Did you ever get to the origins of where that came from?
From what I understand, and for some asking again, it is a player we've looked at, of course. We all know this. We've had the talks with Jorge and, his people. But Alvarez, whilst not fully happy with Diego Simeone, family seems to be there in Spain. It almost as well, the way I would phrase it is, from what we've had, it's too late to pivot to a deal of that magnitude, if that makes sense. When you're spending a sort of the 120 million it would take, those are not deals you do last minute in the last 5 days as a swing, are they? Realistically, it doesn't really happen. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I've already ticked it off my list, unfortunately.
What about amounts that are lower down the list? Because I definitely saw something there throwing an eye on the chat panel about wondering, was there a pivot option with Guehi? And again, I asked you this question directly last week, and we discussed how neither of us had seen anything. The only other defender I'm hearing mentioned at the moment in the news is being linked with Arsenal, and that's Hincapié, someone we'd really, really love to have at the club, who would be ideal, but it's not Liverpool being linked with him. And there doesn't seem to be that secondary name doing the rounds. Now, does that mean there isn't one? Absolutely not, because we have lads who can keep stuff under their hat. But it's fair to say, isn't it, that for the second week in a row, there is no obvious other option. And because I know it upsets people, the Guehi or bust, Isak or bust thing. It upsets the shit out of people because they've watched the games like us, Dave. They can see that our squad, for all the wonderful additions we've made, is not fit for purpose to win the league yet. Things need to happen at this last moment in this window for us to have a realistic opportunity to win this league. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with anything you've just said, but whether people like it or not, and again, it would be great if the clubs were keeping this under hat and, Edwards and Hughes were going to spring a big surprise on us, but the info does seem to be Guehi or bust, that they see Guehi as a market opportunity. They signed Leone to be the full centre-half, that junior one, if you want to call it that, to replace Kwanzaa. They either get Mark Guehi this summer at the reduced fee, or they wait until he's on a free. That's the aim. There's no, unless they're hoodwinking everyone, which I would love them to do in a way. Let's not lie on that. That seems to be Guehi or bust for this.
They are the big stories which will have attracted the vast majority of eyes and ears today. If you have come in late, I point you back to it. Listen to the podcast. But there are some other bits and bobs going on. And one of the stories that I find quite interesting, and it just broke today, I think via Ornstein, is about young McConnell and his move to Ajax, which to me just has that sort of premium feel to it that suggests not only do Ajax rate this player, but the club really rates McConnell.
Yeah, this has been, out of all the options for James McConnell, absolutely handpicked. And the reason he's going there, don't get it twisted, is Johnny Heitinger. Johnny Heitinger, do you remember he used to be our assistant coach that went to be head coach at Ajax? And he's already got Vitislav Jaros off us, the keeper. He was the big driving force that wanted McConnell. They do rate this kid at the club. They do think there is potential he could become a first teamer. And it's a great move, isn't it? A 5-year contract, you've got the asset protection. And Ajax, it's a great move for him in the sense they're one of the more dominant teams in not the best league. And he can play in, Europe, look good, all those types of things as well. So, Johnny Heitinger there saying, yeah, under my tutelage, Slot knows him. They know how he'll get used as well. So this is a deliberately hand-picked move that Liverpool and McConnell are delighted with. But it's important to say, because we've mentioned other youngsters, haven't we, and said, I'm not sure they've really got a future. We said what happened with Bobby Clark. I'm not sure Bad Settage has got a future, but there is a few, and Rio Ungamoa is a different case now altogether, but Ungamoa, Trey Ione, McConnell, these are some of the ones at the age where the club think, yeah, he's got a real chance. This is a great move for this kid.
Look, Ajax are not the club they were
No.
in the early 80s when Jan Mulby signed for them, coming from a sort of rural Danish village to be part of that team. Rubbing shoulders with Jesper Olsen and Johan Cruyff. Equally, they have in recent years signed Liverpool players like Jordan Henderson, who was the washed version of Jordan Henderson.
True.
But Ajax do have that level of respectability
Yeah.
at the elite stage when it comes to the development of young talent. That has never gone away from there. They've always been elite in that area. And for them to take on a young talent in the form of McConnell, I think is really revealing. And I think it could do absolute wonders for him. You could be looking at someone who will be absolutely transformed by this particular experience. I'm tremendously hopeful this is going to do the world of good for James McConnell. I'm really, really excited for him, for this particular move to see how it works out.
Yeah.
I think it's tremendous. Before we move on, the Harvey Elliott out story is also being mentioned a lot. It seems to be contingent on Chelsea doing some business. We flagged this up, not the last show, but the last show and the show before. It seems to be just like we're repeating ourselves from week to week here because we're waiting for the various dominoes to fall. This is the story of our summer, buddy. Is that still the same situation? Is Leipzig still the most likely destination for Elliott?
Possibly. When we get to the European section, because Mr. Ornstein dropped his deal sheet this morning article, didn't he? So Harvey Elliott got a little bit of a mention in that. And there's another knock-on effect. So when we come round to the European, we'll give a little bit more for Harvey in that link as well.
Excellent. Anything else there that has come up in the Liverpool section just before we move on in the last minute or over the last half hour that you didn't get that in?
No, I think we're, in a good way, we're at the point in the season where, listen, we love a breaking story, don't we? And a random player being linked and something, we love all that. Of course we do. But we're at the stage where, 6 days left in the window? Literally, it shuts at 7 o'clock, doesn't it, on Monday, and it's 7 o'clock now. So we're pretty much, bang on the wire here. I don't think you're going to see anything pop out. We've got a good idea who the targets are because Liverpool have reinforced in most of the positions. We're now just in this death or glory phase.
Oh, before we go, I heard you mention it on, I think, News Round this morning. And just in case there are people who basically just listen or watch this show and therefore rely on this show to give them all the transfer stories, they will have heard the Rodrigo rumours over the last while. But I heard you kind of put a bullet in the back of that head as well. And it seems to boil down to the fact that Rodrigo likes money. And he likes the money that he's used to. And the money that he expects is somewhere in the region of 300,000. And that seemed to be, for you, the key reason why this is not going to happen in terms of a move to the Premier League, to Anfield. It may be a move elsewhere. But you seem to be very convinced that has pretty much put the kibosh on it from our perspective.
Yeah, if it was ever going to happen, you'd kind of want to hear by now Rodrigo's prepared to lower his demands or make concessions. You'd want to hear something like that, wouldn't you? But even the reports from Spain today were coming out that the moving that they expect Rodrigo to stay. And yeah, I mean, like the 300 grand a week, maybe we should have expected this because he's hanging around with their new number 9, Le Petit Shite, isn't he, up top? So we'll be feeding him all the stories about his allowance and what his Mars doing for him as well. So maybe we should have expected it. But I just can't see the lowering of the package, the wages, the fee by now. Just can't see it.
Midnight Toker there just asked, is Elliott's move to Red Bull on? And I think Midnight Toker's been token away there because we've just been talking about that for about 5 minutes. Fair play. That's impressive.